Chaitanya Charitamrita, the beginning, the introduction of the Chaitanya Charitamrita is a series of 5 lectures that Srila Prabhupada gave in New York City in 1966 on the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Very interesting lectures, very interesting introduction. And Prabhupada defines he provides a definition of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And he says that Chaitanya is the living force, and Charita is the character, and Amrita is immortality. And so he says, therefore, one could define the Chaitanya Charitamrita as the character of the living force of immortality, which is an interesting definition of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which we don't usually consider, but the character of the living force of immortality. And that character is something that Charita is something that Prabhupada emphasized so much in his teachings. And generally we hear it as the deeds or the pastimes and activities. But it's definitely the character, which indicates a personality, and indicates a personality of a certain type of personality, a certain type of character, a certain type of disposition or mentality. And that disposition, mentality of the devotee who's presenting this, the consciousness of eternality, is demonstrated or personified in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself and his interactions with devotees and with non-devotees, bringing everybody into Krishna consciousness. Okay, so that was a little preamble to get everybody on board. Here we are at 5:30. We've already chanted Jai Radha Madhava, and I'll just share screen so you can see today's verse. And as we'll take advantage of the technology. Where's my Zoom going? Oh, bro. What's happening? No, not that screen. There you go. Should be shared now. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 27, text number 20. Kvachit tattva marashena nivritam bhayam ulbanam anivrita nimittatvat punapratya vitishtate. Kvachit tattva marashena nivritam bhayam ulbanam anivrita nimittatvat punapratya vitishtate. You probably noticed in this verse there's an alliteration, or a series of combinations of letters here. The ta, which is repeated many times in combination as double letters, and also at the end and beginning of words. Krachit tattva marashena nivrittam bhayamulbanam anivritta nimittatvat puna pratya titishtate. Krachit, in a certain case, tattva, the fundamental principles, vamashena, by reflecting upon, nivrittam, avoided, bhayam, fear, ulbanam, great, anivrita, not ceased, nimittatvat, since the cause, purnaha, again, pratyavatishtate, it appears. Translation. Even if the great fear of bondage is avoided by mental speculation and inquiry into the fundamental principles, it may still appear again, since its cause has not ceased. Srila Prabhupada's purport. Material bondage is caused by putting oneself under the control of matter because of the false ego of lording it over material nature. Bhagavad Gita 7:27 states, Icha dvesha samuttena. Two kinds of propensities arise in a living entity. One propensity is Icha, which means desire to lord it over material nature or to be as great as the Supreme Lord. Everyone desires to be the greatest personality in this material world. Dvesha means envy. When one becomes envious of Krishna or of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one thinks, why should Krishna be the all in all? I'm as good as Krishna. These two items, desire to be the Lord, and envy of the Lord, are the beginning cause of material bondage. As long as a philosopher, salvationist, or voidist has some desire to be supreme, to be everything, to be or to deny the existence of God, the cause remains and there is no question of his liberation. Devahuti very intelligently says, one may theoretically analyze and say that by knowledge he has become freed, but actually, as long as the cause exists, he is not free. Bhagavad Gita confirms that after performing such speculative activities for many, many births, when one actually comes to his real consciousness and surrenders unto the Supreme Lord Krishna, then the fulfillment of his research and knowledge is actually achieved. There is a gulf of difference between theoretical freedom and actual freedom from material bondage. The Bhagavatam 10.14.4 says that if one gives up the auspicious path of devotional service and simply tries to know things by speculation, one wastes his valuable time. Klishyanti ye kevala bodha labdhaye. The result of such labor of love is simply labor. There is no other result. The labor of speculation is ended only by exhaustion. The example is given that there is no benefit in husking the skin of an empty paddy. The rice is already gone. Similarly, simply by the speculative process, one cannot be freed from material bondage, for the cause still exists. One has to nullify the cause, and then the effect will be nullified. This is explained by the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the following verses. Oma Gyanantimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Militamina Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yenam Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Darati Swaparantikam Namasreshna Manumapi Sachiputra Matra Swarupam Rupam Tasya Gradam Urupurim Maturingo Stavritim Radha Kundagirivadam Mahodadika Madhavahasam Praptoyasa Pratita Kripaya Sri Gurum Tam Natosmi. I just realized I didn't share the verse. I said I was going to share the verse. Sorry about that. Kvachit tattva mashena nivrittam vayamurbanam nivritta nimittatvat puna pratyatitishtate. Even if the great fear of bondage is avoided by mental speculation and inquiry into the fundamental principles, it may still appear again, since its cause has not been ceased. This class today has been, I gave it the title this morning, the Becoming Free from Icha and Dvesha. Srila Prabhupada explains these two important points at the beginning of his purport, desire and envy. Sometimes Prabhupada translates Dvesha as hate, and hate and envy as synonymous in many places in the Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. And the subtitle is Removing the Cause of Bondage, because that's where the purport finishes with Devahuti's realization that she's sharing with Kapila Dev that if the cause isn't removed, then no matter how many performance austerities we perform, no matter how much knowledge we cultivate and develop, no matter how much charity we give, no matter how many, no matter what we do on the material platform, we can't become freed from envy, and we can't become free from desire. The material desire is still there unless we engage in the process of bhakti. There's a saying that you can't dig a hole in a different place. You can't dig a hole in a different place by digging deeper the same hole. And that's very much relevant in terms of our thinking processes and what's got us into this material world, and that is the material consciousness of Icha and Dvesha, desire and envy, desire to lord it over the material world, and envy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that competition of wanting to be God. And therefore the material world is created for us to fulfill these two desires, these two realities, or as we mentioned last time, the weakness of heart, Hridaya Dobalyam, which is mentioned in the 15th chapter in the Gita and by Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his analysis of the Shikshastakam, I believe. In 1966, Srila Prabhupada gave a series of lectures that I referred to earlier in the preamble before we started the class. And as part of those lectures, he read from Madhya Lila. He reads the introduction, the first 14 shlokas of the Adi Lila, and then in later lectures in New York City, he lectured on Sanatan Shiksha in the Madhya Lila, chapter 20 of Madhya Lila in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, to a very green audience, to a very new group of bhaktas, of devotees, his very first devotees. He was presenting the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And in these lectures, Prabhupada referred to, or he would paraphrase, because there was no translation of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, so he would translate on the run, and he would paraphrase, and he would elaborate on the shlokas, the Bengali shlokas and the Sanskrit shlokas, and present that to his audience. And in one such lecture in 66, he presented the parable of the astrologer, Savagya. Savagya means somebody who knows everything. And Prabhupada mentioned that an astrologer in Vedic times knew past, present, and future. And he talked there about the Brigu astrologers, who can tell you who you were in your past life and what you're doing in this life and where you're heading for in your next life. And this astrologer, he comes to a poor man's house, a hut in the village, and he says to the poor man, he's surprised that he's so unhappy and he's living in such a miserly condition, because he's actually a very wealthy person. His father left him a great fortune. And the poor man said to the astrologer, yes, he heard that his father was very rich, but he can't find his riches. He can't find the treasure that his father has left for him. And so therefore he's living this very meager existence in the village. So he asked the astrologer where he could find that treasure. And the astrologer told him that if he digs in the southern side of the house, he should be very careful. He should be very cautious, because in the southern side of the house, there he'll be bitten by wasps and poisonous insects, and they'll obstruct him from achieving the treasure. And if he digs in the western side of the house, he'll be attacked by a ghost. He'll be all consumed by these ghostly living entities, and they'll also obstruct him from achieving the treasure. And if he digs in the north, he'll be bitten by a big black snake, and he should be very cautious not to dig in the north side of the house. But if he digs a little earth from the eastern side, just a little, just from the surface, he'll touch the treasure. And there the astrologer leaves his instructions to the poor man in the house. And Prabhupada elaborates there in his lecture. And he says, at least the poor man now knows where the treasure is. He may not be able to open the treasure. He may not access the treasure, but he knows where the treasure is. So he's been given this knowledge or this information. Now the next step is to open the treasure, or as we later in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, to plunder the treasure of the love of Godhead. Of course, this treasure of the poor man is not love of Godhead, but the analogy is good, and it holds particularly relevant for this morning's meditation on removing the cause of the bondage of the living entity, and how that can't be done by karma, by fruit of activities that we dig on, if we dig on the southern side, because on the southern side will be destroyed by the poisonous wasps and insects who are likened to karmakanda activities. The karmakanda activities of the Vedas ultimately cause bondage. They're not freedom. They may be a temporary freedom from suffering or misery or inconvenience in this material world and take us to the higher heavenly planets, but it's a temporary relief, and so it's considered to be a poison. And if we dig on the western side, we'll be consumed by the ghost of impersonalism, and that is a warning for the jnanis, that for the jnanis who just meditate on, who understand they're not this material body, and Devahuti is acknowledging that. They understand they're not material body. They know that there's a treasure, but they haven't got access to the treasure. And therefore, they remain influenced by or under the influence of the ghost who consumes their identity, and therefore they're unable to interact on a personal platform. And on the northern side, if you dig, then you'll be bitten by a black snake, and this black snake is compared to the yogic process. And the yogi who is aspiring to achieve the 8 different siddhis of yoga is compared to the black snake, because the black snake is going to devour them, and their ultimate goal is to merge into the Supreme Personality of Godhead, represented by the enviousness of the snake. And the treasure is there, and not very deep. It says just dig a little into the east, and therefore we have information of where the treasure is. Prabhupada says that the Vedas, Krishna is our astrologer. We should take information from Krishna, where we've been, where we are now, and where we're going to in the future. And Prabhupada quotes that verse in the 7th chapter of the Gita, where Krishna says that he is the Vedaham Samatitani Vatamani Charjuna, that Krishna is saying to Arjuna that he knows Bhavishyani Chabhutani, he knows all that's happened in the past, he knows what's happening in the present, and he knows what's going to happen in the future, and he knows all living entities, Chabhutani. But Krishna says, me, Mam Tuna Vedana Kaschana, nobody knows me, because Krishna is the supreme original cause. And in the same chapter, in the 7th chapter, it says that out of many millions of people who are aspiring for spiritual realization, hardly one knows Krishna in truth. Veti tattvata. It's not an easy thing, and therefore Devahuti is emphasizing this point in her inquiry to Kapila, so that he will elaborate and he'll elucidate on the importance or the primacy of bhakti over all other processes. And all other processes are dependent on bhakti, and the other processes of karma, jnana, and yoga are not sufficient to remove the material propensities of the living entity, and therefore not sufficient for us to dissolve our false ego, that kataham iti manyate, that I am the doer of everything. And so long as we maintain this false identity as a material body, then we can continue in the cycle of birth and death. That is the ultimate ignorance that are in this body. And therefore, from that ignorance, from the tamaguna, we perform sinful activities. And sinful activities are simply activities that are against the desire of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Prabhupada challenged in one of those early lectures in New York that, what is your definition of morality? What does morality mean? And nobody came forward with a definition. And Prabhupada's definition of morality was that which is pleasing to the Lord, pleasing to Krishna is morality. In fact, that is actually the exact definition of piety that was given in the Republic of Plato's Republic. Piety, or Socrates says that piety is that which is pleasing to the gods. But Prabhupada is saying here that morality, real morality, there's a mundane morality and a transcendental morality, and that the transcendental morality is to please Krishna, to engage in activities that are in sync with Krishna, to engage in activities that, according to the desire of the Lord, that will be pleasing to the Lord and not pleasing to our senses, not simply for a personal selfish motivation, but to the motivation of our activities is transformed into a spiritual activity. In the Bhagavatam, there's a very instructive verse in the second chapter of the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam. And there the demigods are offering their prayers to Devaki, to Krishna in the womb of Devaki. And they mention this verse, Yanyeda Vindaksha Vimukta Maninas, Tvayasta Bhavad Avishuddha Buddhayaha, that those who are engaging in the processes of jnana and yoga, their intelligence is avishuddha buddhaya. It's impure, it's contaminated, it's covered. And even though they may think that they're on a very high platform, padam, that they've achieved a high status in this material world through their knowledge and through their austerities and through their practices, again, they will fall down. Patanti adaha means they will fall down. Nadrita yushma rangrayaha, because they deny that, because they have not been attracted to the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that is the essential message that we get from the Bhagavatam. The supremacy, continuously reinforcing the supremacy of bhakti over other processes, and how the bhakti process removes the taste for material enjoyment. And it not just removes the taste for material enjoyment, but it gives a taste. It provides a higher taste, that parandrishtva, for engaging in the processes of bhakti. And the processes are what will open the treasure. We've been given knowledge now, the sambandha of the treasure of bhakti, of the supremacy of bhakti, of the beauty of devotional service. But unless we engage in bhakti, unless we engage in the processes, the 5 potent processes of bhakti, we won't have access. We won't be able to access the treasure. We won't be able to plunder that storehouse of love of Godhead. And that is the 5 potent processes of bhakti is something that we need to continually remind ourselves of, and it's something that we continually need to focus on. That this is our identity. Our identity is developed around this 5 potent processes of bhakti. In the 5th chapter of the Gita, it says that identity with individuality, or individuality with identity in Krishna consciousness is real knowledge. In spiritual life is real knowledge. So these 2 concepts of individuality and identity are essential for us to understand, to understand how to access Krishna consciousness, how to open this treasure of the storehouse of love of Godhead, to continually identify as a spirit soul. That is our meditation, the definition of who we are. We define ourselves as a spiritual living entity, completely apart from the gross and the material body. And somehow or other, we've fallen into this ocean of material suffering, of misery, being burnt by the Adi-Devik, Adi-Devik, Adi-Atmika, and Adi-Atmika kleshas, by the threefold miseries. But by some unimaginable good fortune, we've been given this opportunity to engage in devotional service by the spiritual master, by the mercy of the spiritual master, and following in the spiritual master's footsteps, we've been given the service of Krishna, or Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And that is our identity. That's our identity mantra. That's our self-affirmation that we wake up every morning and offer our obeisances to the spiritual master and begin our identity, identifying ourselves as a spiritual being, completely apart from the gross and the subtle body. And therefore, whatever we do, whatever we offer, whatever we eat, whatever sacrifice we perform, yat karoshi, yat ashnasi, yat juhosi, dadasi, yat, whatever it is, it's done as an arpanam for Krishna. We do it to offer to Krishna, to the Supreme Lord. And that will increase our propensity to want to desire to do more devotional service, to become free from the material contamination of this ichcha and dvesha, these increasing our material desires and envy of other living entities. I wanted to focus a little bit on these 5 potent processes because they're very fundamental to our bhakti process, and that they're very accessible. There's something that we do day in and day out, and therefore it's something that we should be refining, and we should be continually perfecting as we do it every day. It says the things that we do every day, we become perfect at those things by that habit of continually engaging in those same activities, which never become hackneyed or boring for the devotees. We just become more and more, we find more and more excitement and life and challenge in engaging in these potent processes. So the first one is reading Bhagavatam and hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, Vedic literatures. And we hear in the beginning of the Bhagavatam that this daily recitation of Bhagavatam, or the daily hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam, cleanses it removes the impurities. Nashta abhadreshu, that takes away all the inauspiciousness. And then later in that chapter, in the second chapter, in the first canto, Prabhupada translates abhadrani as material desires. So what is those inauspicious? What is not good for the living entity? Material desires. And what the Bhagavatam does is Krishna, who's dwelling in the heart of the living entity, who's there as our best friend, Suritam, he cleanses the desire for material enjoyment from the heart, from those who take this process of seriously hearing and chanting. There's always a qualification. There's always this a qualification of how we perform these activities in bhakti. The one who is seriously engaging in hearing and chanting, then Krishna, who's in the heart of the living entity, removes the desire for material enjoyment in the heart, and we develop a taste for hearing and chanting more and more in this culture of Srimad Bhagavatam. And the second one I'd like to look at is Sangha, Vaishnava Sangha, association with the devotees, because Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur quotes this verse many, many times from this canto, Satam Prasangam, from the teachings of Kapiladev. Satam Prasangam Mama Viri Samvido, Bhavanti Hritkana Rasayana Kata, that this hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam, hearing the Krishna Katha is cleansing the heart from all the impurities, and it's the beginning of our bhakti. It's where bhakti begins. Bhakti begins when we start to hear, when we understand and we hear about the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his amazing activities and pastimes. And we have so many opportunities to hear and to chant about the Lord. There's so many incredible stories in the Vedic literatures, in Srimad Bhagavatam, just in Srimad Bhagavatam alone, without Mahabharata, without Ramayana, without all the Upanishads, without so many other Puranas, just the Srimad Bhagavatam alone and the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of opportunities to hear about Krishna and to glorify Krishna. And that's such a gift that we have to be able to associate with this transcendental sound vibration and to share that with others, to give that gift to others. It's the greatest gift that we can give to anybody, is to give them the gift of Bhagavatam, give them the gift of the stories and pastimes and activities of the characters from the Chaitanya Charitamrita or the Srimad Bhagavatam. And Prabhupada, an interesting little side point here, one of the devotees in the early days asked Prabhupada if Joan of Arc was in the Bhagavatam, and is there a Joan of Arc story in the Bhagavatam? And Prabhupada didn't respond, and so she repeated her question, thinking perhaps Prabhupada didn't know who Joan of Arc was. And then he thought for some more time, and he said, why are you taking Joan of Arc out of the Bhagavatam? She's already in the Bhagavatam. And then Prabhupada explained that the Bhagavatam is not limited. The Bhagavatam is not just the verses and the stories that we have in this particular, in the book Bhagavatam that we have now. He says Bhagavatam is unlimited. Bhagavatam means the pastimes and activities of the devotees, the glorious pastimes and deeds and activities of the devotees. And Joan of Arc is already in Bhagavatam. She might not be in the Bhagavatam that we're reading, but she's a Bhagavata. As a saint, she's a Bhagavata. She's given her life to God, to Jesus Christ, and so she's a Bhagavata. So the Bhagavatam is incredibly expansive and all-inclusive and comprehensive. And it's something that every time we go back to the Bhagavatam, we'll experience a new insight, a new realization, a new angle on a story, on a pastime that we've heard. And we get that by serving the Vaishnavas. It's the key to connecting with Bhagavatam, the key to connecting or to developing a taste for the Srimad Bhagavatam is that Mahat Sevam, Dvaramahu Vimukte. It opens the door for liberation for the devotees. And this verse is interesting because it's from Lord Rishabdev in the 5th canto, Mahat Sevam, Dvaramahu Vimuktes, because that Vimukti, it's not Mukti of the Jnanis or Mukti of the Yogis, but Vimukti is defined by the Acharyas, by Srila Prabhupada, as a special type of liberation which means service to Krishna. Mother Yashoda receives this Vimukti from Krishna when he agrees to be bound by Mother Yashoda. She gets this special type of Vimukti. It's not, she doesn't get liberation, any of the 5 types of liberation. She gets pure bhakti. She gets the opportunity to continue to engage in her Vatsalya Ras with Krishna. And the next one that I want to look at is deity worship, because in deity worship, we all have access to deities by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, particularly there in Auckland, Radhagiri Thari, Gaunitai, and Jagannath Baladev Subhadra, all installed by Srila Prabhupada. Such an incredible opportunity for Auckland Vasis to take advantage of, to access these deities that were installed by Srila Prabhupada. And here in Melbourne, the same thing, the same set of deities, Radha Ballabha, Gaunitai, and Jagannath Baladev Subhadra, all installed by Srila Prabhupada. And all over the world, we have so many hundreds and hundreds, I think 500 or 600 temples now, and all of them have some form of deity worship being performed every day. We're having this very wonderful meditation in our bhakti learning on pilgrimage in Parikrama, and we're doing a pilgrimage at the moment around the 7 temples of Vrindavan. And it's such an incredible meditation to go into each of these temples and to associate with the deity and the personalities behind the deities. We go into Mother Mohan and Sanatana Goswami's Samadhi and Sanatana Goswami's Bhajan Kuti, and the pastimes that Sanatana Goswami had, and how the deities are moved from Vrindavan to Jaipur, and sometimes to another place, to Corali, and then sometimes back to Vrindavan and back. And these deities have such a, and it plays such an important place in our devotional lives. And they're very much this Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, the culture of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas is very much centered around deities. You see, all of the acharyas, all of the great acharyas had deities. Rupa Goswami carved deities. He carved the Damodar deity for his nephew, Jiva Goswami. He was expert in carving deities, and he worshipped Radha Govindaji. And like this, Jiva Goswami worshipped Damodar, and Gopabhata Goswami worshipped Radha Raman, and Raghunath Goswami worshipped Radha Giridhari. And in this way, the Goswamis, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, our great acharya, our great commentator, Srimad Bhagavatam, worshipped Radha Gokulananda, and Baladevi Dibhushan worshipping Radha Vinod, and said that he installed Radha Shyam Sundar of Shyamananda Pandit in Vrindavan. So all of these deities have such an amazing history, and that history connects us back to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu through disciplic succession to at least 500 years. And then many of the deities were rediscovered that go back to Krishna Lila, and they were installed by Bhadranath, the great grandson of Krishna. And so the deity is a direct connection for us to Krishna, a direct connection to us, to our eternal culture. And we develop a culture around the deities. Through the dressing, through the decoration, through the garlands, through the time and energy and effort that it's taken to engage in the deity worship, is helping us to develop our natural affection for Krishna. It's a very personal interaction that we have, and therefore it's such an important part of our Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, such an important part of our personal lives, to have the deity to regulate us for cleanliness, to regulate us in our thoughts, to purify our thoughts, to purify externally and internally. The deity has so many incredible benefits, and such a meditation for the devotees. And that directly connects us to the Holy Dham, because the Holy Dham has this potency to remind us of Krishna. The Holy Dham is a place, a physical location where the Supreme Personality of Godhead personally appears, where he lives, where he performs pastimes and activities. And that is such a wonderful meditation. And to go there and to feel that inspiration of the Dham, everybody can have that same experience. I've taken my sister there. I've taken my niece to Vrindavan, and both of them, they're not devotees of Krishna, but both of them had such a profound effect on them. And every time I see them, when we see them for functions, Christmas time, or for a family affair, they always remember their experience in Vrindavan. They'll never forget that. And they remember details that we wouldn't even remember what happened there. And my niece particularly, she's a musician. And she was telling everybody, there was a wedding a couple of months back, a family wedding, and she had this whole audience of a big table of people, and she was telling them about Vrindavan, and she was giving like this whole lecture about Vrindavan in the middle of this crazy wedding that you can imagine, this Western wedding. Reception was going on. And she was explaining to them about Vrindavan and how things worked there in the temple and the 24-hour kirtan. And she was there for New Year's Eve, and she told them how she danced all evening with these crazy devotees, and she was chanting 3 words the whole evening for 4 or 5 hours. She chanted Hare Krishna and Rama, and she just kept saying Hare Krishna and Rama, Hare Krishna and Rama. And she was just fascinated by the whole concept, because she's a musician, and she couldn't imagine how 3 words could be sung with such feeling and emotion and ecstasy. And that is a potency of the Holy Dham, that the activities we perform in the Holy Dham have so much more potency. And the activities that we perform in our temples and in our homes where Krishna is worshipped have great potency and potential. And last but not least, chanting the holy name of the Lord, that Nama Kirtan, that both the Sankirtan, the loud chanting the holy name of the Lord, and the chanting of the names of Krishna on our japa, our personal meditation. And that kirtan has become such a phenomenon in the world, not just within ISKCON, but in the world, people talk about kirtan. Another one of my nephews asked me one time, he was talking to me about different things, interesting things, and he's an academic, and he said to me, have you ever done any kirtan? It was only like about a year ago or something. Have you ever done any kirtan? And I said, yeah, I've done some kirtan. And he told me about his kirtan experience. He goes to a kirtan group in Collingwood, in one of the suburbs of Melbourne, which is, it's not an ISKCON group, but they meet every Sunday, and he goes to this kirtan group. Anyway, so I invited him to the temple, and he started coming to our Sunday evening kirtans at the temple. And certainly devotees all around the world have made created a whole lifestyle around kirtan. Many devotees have created their whole life centered around kirtan, glorification, loud glorification of Krishna through his holy names. But what I really want to focus on now is chanting japa, because it's something that we have access to 24/7. We might not always have access to kirtan because of social distancing, or because of so many other circumstances, material circumstances, but we always have access to japa. We always have access to chant the holy name of the Lord, whether it's quietly, without beads, or on beads. We always have access. And most of us have the capacity and the ability to chant on our beads, and to chant regularly on our beads. And I wanted to make a real focus and a real emphasis on the importance of japa and the importance of quality japa. And as my friend Mahatma Prabhu says, to give up what he calls courtesy japa. Just completely give up our courtesy japa means that I wake up and I have to chant 16 rounds today. And I'll get them done no matter what. In between all my other chores and activities and responsibilities, by the time I get to sleep tonight, I would have done my 16 rounds of japa. And if we continue to do japa like that for year in and year out, then we won't get the desired result of engaging in devotional service, engaging in our japa. So he has developed this whole system. Mahatma Prabhu has been giving japa workshops for over 20 years now, I think. And he has these incredible japa affirmations, which are definitely worthwhile searching out on Google. I put them into an interactive slideshow. If anybody wants, they can get them for me. I can send it to them. And the affirmations are that, I get to chant, I want to chant, I love to chant. And when I chant, I chant. And when I chant to reestablish my relationship with Radha and Krishna, they're very, positive. There's 20 affirmations, and they get you in a particular mood for chanting. And I would encourage devotees to take their japa, to create some ritual around the chanting of japa. We create so many rituals around so many other things that we do in our lives. And ritual has a particular place and a particular importance. So when we chant, we sit down and create a space. Satchidananda Swami talks about creating sacred space, and many devotees. So create this special space where this is my japa zone. There's all these advertisements around about safe driving these days, and not using a mobile phone while driving. And one of the first point is put the mobile phone in the glove box. So don't put it out of reach, and close the glove box, lock it so you can't access it, so you can't text and drive. So one of my good friends here in Melbourne, I asked him during Kartik, I said, what was his vow for Kartik? And he said for the new year, what was his New Year's resolution? And he said his New Year's resolution was to not pick up his phone until 8 o'clock in the morning. That was his resolution. And I thought that was quite an interesting and a practical one, because oftentimes, we wake up and the first thing we do is check the phone, check our messages, check our Facebook, check our feeds, check our emails, whatever we check. check our Slack, check our Trellos, check all the apps. But if we're doing this the first thing when we wake up in the morning, that starts to agitate the modes. It starts to agitate the consciousness. So I've developed that practice for a long time now of not checking the phone until the morning program's finished, until we've got a sufficient amount of Krishna bhakti in our consciousness, a sufficient amount of spiritual vibration happening, and then we can begin to engage our activities with spiritual consciousness. We engage in our activities with a higher level of conscious awareness that what we're doing is for Krishna. And I see the connection now. The connection is there because of the japa. A really interesting insight that Deva Amritaswamy shares with the devotees. He has these boat tours in Melbourne regularly with young devotees who are just coming to Krishna consciousness. Young students mainly. We have this Bhakta Bhavan, a big group of flats very close to the temple, and they're full of all these young Indian students from the university around Melbourne universities, and he takes them on these boat tours, and he has all these really interesting topics that he talks about, as he does, very contemporary topics, and relates them all to Krishna. And one time he went out on a boat trip. I heard from some people who went on the trip. I asked them, how was it, and what did he teach, and what was your takeaway from the trip? And one time that the devotees told me, one of the young boys, he said, Maharaj was talking about time management. And we were all saying to Maharaj that it's, we have so many responsibilities to do our PhDs. We have to study for 8, 10, 12 hours a day. And then we have to cook, and we have to clean, and we have to get to the university, and we have to come back. So we don't have time to spend that time to chant 16 rounds. And then they said that Maharaj said, you don't have time not to chant 16 rounds. He said, you chant 16 rounds early in the morning, then your consciousness will be ready to organize and prioritize and to systematize things in such a way that you'll make time. By giving that time to the holy name, you'll make time later on in the day. And I think we've all had that experience. We've all had that realization. When we have that special focused time on our japa, that it enables us it gives us time. We borrow time, we buy time by giving that special time early in the morning, particularly through the Brahma Muhurta hours, by connecting with the holy name. So creating that special space, that sacred space, creating that special time, that sacred time, where we just engage in japa, and we put away the phone, we put away all the external obstacles and disturbances and distractions, and it's just a focus on the holy name. When I chant, I chant. We have this saying between myself and my wife, if we're about to interrupt each other, we say, when I chant, and that's the mantra, that's the code that we're in the zone. We want to get into the zone, we want to stay there, and we want to finish our 16 rounds in one sitting. I think that's one of the most potent things that's helped me to kind of improve my japa over the last 12 months, is chanting 16 rounds right through and not breaking it, not saying I'll chant 8 rounds now and I'll do chant 8 rounds in another time. In my sacred space, in my time, I won't be distracted, but I'll split them up. And of course, we have to do that for practical reasons from time to time. But 95% of the time, if we can find that special sacred space and sacred time to chant the full 16 rounds, you find 9 out of 10 times that later on in the day there's time and we chant more. So when we've got those 16 rounds under our belt, there's always opportunities and time during the day where we can put in an extra 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 rounds. And particularly on special holidays, on the Kodasi and on the appearance days, we have the opportunity to spend more time with the holy name. And we'll do that if we've got this practice. If we practice to chant 16 at a sitting, then we can do another 16 and another 16. But if we don't have the practice, it'll become very arduous, it'll become like a labor, and we'll become exhausted by it. So that is a really important part of becoming free from material desire, is to cultivate these 5 potent processes. These 5 potent processes are the access to the treasure. We've found the treasure, we know where the treasure is, and now to access that treasure and to continue to have continuous, uninterrupted access to the treasure, 24/7 access to the treasure, we need to diligently apply ourselves to a process. And that process, that abhidheya, is what is given to us by the spiritual master. It's what the spiritual master has given us, the key to open the treasure of the storehouse of love of Godhead. We can't plunder that storehouse without the authority to enter into that storehouse. And the spiritual master provides us with that opportunity. I did want to mention a couple of points about Icha and Dvesha, extra points, and removing. We've talked about removing desire from hearing, Srimvatam Swakata Krishna, how that material desire is removed by Krishna, who sits in the heart of the living entity, who desires who develops the desire to hear his glorification. We read a really interesting verse in the 9th canto of Bhagavatam during Ram's appearance day. And there it says that Purushodama Charitam, Shravanai Upadharayan, those who develop, who hear the pastimes and activities of Lord Ramchandra, become free from envy. And that was it was quite an interesting and striking verse for me, by hearing the pastimes and activities of Lord Ramchandra. It seems specifically Lord Ramchandra, one becomes freed from the disease of envy. That was the exact words that we used, that become free from the disease of envy. And envy and material desire is a disease. And the disease has to, for any disease, we need to approach a qualified physician, a qualified doctor, somebody who can help us to become free from this disease. And that's very much often referred to in the scriptures as the oshadi, the medicine, the bhavoshadi srotamano biramas, is to hear. That the medicine to become free from this disease of kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsadya, of lust, of anger, of intoxication, or of this madness, of envy, of fear, of anger. The medicine to become free from that is hearing, is to hear the pastimes and activities of the Lord, and to engage in these 5 potent processes. So that was something interesting. And that enviousness is something, it's such a horrible feeling to experience envy of another living entity. Prabhupada says in that purport in the 9th canto that envy of the Vaishnavas is a great offense. To become envious of another devotee who's making progress in spiritual life, it's an aparad. And when we feel envious of another devotee, we feel like, it's such a horrible experience, because we feel like we're becoming distant from Krishna when we envy another devotee's progress in spiritual life, or their position, or their recognition. And it's all based on the bodily concept. It's the root cause of it is, as Devahudi mentions here at the end of this purport, Prabhupada mentions Devahudi, that the cause hasn't been removed. If the cause isn't removed, if the bodily identification is not removed, if we still identify as a material body, then envy will be there, lust will be there, greed will be there, madness will be there, illusion will be there, fear will be there, because they're concomitant factors of material existence. And we can only transcend those by engaging in pure bhakti. And that's where we'll wrap it up with that. Last week I mentioned that verse, Yapada Pankaja Palasa Vilasa Bhaktya. It's a very interesting verse from the 4th canto of Bhagavatam. And it said there that the devotee can uproot the deep-rooted desire for material enjoyment, can be uprooted by the devotee who engages in the process of devotional service, but not by those who don't. That Tadvanna dikta matayo patayo pirudha yatayo piruta. It says, by those jnanis and the yogis, they're not able to uproot this, they're not able to destroy this deep-rooted desire for material enjoyment in the heart, because they haven't taken shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says the same thing. He approaches Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in a very humble mood in his prayer at the beginning of one of the chapters in the Antya Lila, the early chapters in the Antya Lila of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And he says that he's infected by the disease of material activities, by the germs. He says, I'm infected by the germs of material activities and the boils of envy. And therefore, he falls in an ocean of humility and takes shelter of the lotus feet of the great physician, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Lord Chaitanya he's referred to by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami as the Chaitanya Vaidya Mashraye. A Vaidya is a doctor, a physician. So Chaitanya Vaidya Mashraye, we take shelter of that great physician, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who can cure us of this infection of the germs of material activities, and who can slice the boil of envy from our hearts, from our consciousness. And Lord Chaitanya has this special potency to do this, because he's providing us with something that has been previously not available. And that is this, through the chanting of the holy name of the Lord, we have the opportunity to connect with Krishna through the sound vibration, and to become free from this material baggage or this material bondage that we have come in contact with due to our desire to lord it over the material nature, and our enviousness of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which manifests in our material activities. So the takeaways from today then are to focus on the japa, to focus on these 5 potent processes of devotional service, because that will remove the cause of our bodily identification. Only that. No other processes will do that. So we're creating a sacred space in our house, a sacred space in our temple, in our community, a sacred time, a special time for japa, and prioritize that japa. That's one of the really important things in effective time management, is prioritizing. So give that high priority time to japa, and then everything else will fall into place. We'll create time by giving time to our japa. Remove those distractions, remove things that are going to remind us of our material activity, or activities that are not the pure focus of bhakti, of our chanting. To chant all those rounds, to chant 16 rounds straight through, and to develop a taste for doing that chanting through a regular kind of ritual every morning. When I'd start chanting my japa in the morning, after I do the Mangalati prayers and Nishinga prayers and Tulsi Devi, we do this affirmation that I'm an eternal servant of Krishna, and recite Naham Vipronda Cha Narapi Napi Vaishina Shudra verse, and other verses that we learned to recite when we when we used to perform deity worship in the temple. And those verses, we recite them to prepare us for japa. Japa becomes like our deity. And a couple of other things to do, to add on to those things about creating the space and the time and prioritizing and chanting straight through, is to avoid prajalpa, avoid conversations that are not beneficial, to avoid village katha, gossiping. That's something that will really take away from the taste for the holy name of the Lord. It causes an obstruction. And to glorify the devotees and stop glorifying non-devotees. Stop the desire for assimilating the successes and the glories of those who are not performing devotional service. And there's so many devotees to glorify in our communities, in our society, in the Bhagavatam, in Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's unlimited. So spend time glorifying. That is our mona vrata, is to glorify devotees. Our vow of silence is to glorify Krishna, to glorify his devotees, to glorify the Bhagavatam, and serve the devotees at every opportunity, especially, the mission of the spiritual master. The spiritual master is the one who's giving us the key to the storehouse of love of Godhead, to that treasure that is hidden just under the surface in the eastern side of the house. We've touched it. We know where it is. We know what it is. And now to enter into that treasure and to be able to access that treasure, that wealth of bhakti, we have to serve the devotees. That is the door to that treasure is open. Mahat sevam dwaram ahuvi muktes. It's opened by service to the great Vaishnavas. So we'll finish there, wrap it up, and see if there's any questions or comments. I'm not sure how we receive those questions or comments, but over to you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Danvat Pranam.
Hare Krishna, nice to see you.
Nice to see you as well. Thank you so much for giving this nectarian class about creating the sacred space.
I can see you have one there. Tulsi Devi is looking very healthy there.
Yes. Yes. So creating our space with Tulsi Devi, I chant with Tulsi Devi, and it helps me to be attentive in my chanting as well. Sure. And I really like the way you explain that, before chanting, we do these prayers. And taking a sankalpa, I find is also very, very good to do our 16 rounds.
For sure.
Thank you, Prabhu.
You're welcome. You've been serving Tulsi Devi for a long time, Mataji.
All devotees, blessings.
From Christchurch to Auckland.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
I can see your name, but I can't see your face.
Oh, it's now kind of working. It goes off and on. So,
no problem.
Sorry. Yes, I just want to say, thank you so much for your class. And I really like the point, the same point that Sudharma Mataji was talking about creating a sacred space and having a sankalpa, before chanting the japa. And I also found that it's so powerful to be able to chant in one go. And it's so important. And so I was just thinking, to get to that step, I also have been doing the saying this affirmations from Mahatma Prabhu, which I stuck on my wall. So it's easy to it's so many, so I just say a few. And Sachinandan Swami Prabhu has also so many prayers before japa time, before your japa session. So I found those really helpful. So I was thinking, to get to that step, one requires faith and discipline. And sometimes it's difficult, to encourage devotees to get to that step. So, the faith that the holy name is non-different from Krishna, and that we made a promise to Krishna in front of the devotees and the deities that I'm going to take this vow. So it requires discipline yes, that's where the word disciple comes from, discipline. So how do you like encourage devotees to get to that stage of discipline and faith?
Yeah, that's a good question. One of the most important parts of or considerations for developing faith and taking that leap of faith from the unknown to from the known to the unknown is association. And chanting, I've always found chanting, particularly when as a young devotee, chanting in the association of devotees who are chanting together is very powerful. And that's why chanting in the temple together is such a powerful experience after the Mangalati. And I have, vivid memories of chanting japa with the senior devotees in our temple in Melbourne Temple as a young bhakta. And I'm pretty sure that's what gave me the resolve to keep chanting, even though I wasn't, I didn't have a taste for it, or I didn't have any realization of what I was doing or anything. But I woke up every morning and got into the temple for Mangalati and sat down and chanted my japa with them because, that's what everybody was doing. That's what you did. But that's what gave me, I think that's what solidifies the process when we do it together. It's powerful. And then as we mature in our bhakti and as we grow older, we may not have the opportunity to be in the temple or to be with lots of other devotees to chant our rounds. But because we got that really strong, solid training and that foundation, then we can continue to do it. So I think association is really important to chant together. And for younger devotees who are just coming to the temple that may not have access to the temple, particularly nowadays in lockdown, if we can somehow connect to them and set up a japa session, online japa session or a japa session just at home. We live in a community away from the temple, about half an hour from the temple. There is about 200 devotees living in this neighborhood. And the devotees hold different Mangalatis at different times at different devotees' houses. And so we can go there and do Mangalati, or we can go there and chant. And it might not be many, 2 or 3 families might come there and do that. And at the end of it, have a small Bhagavatam class. So I think it's really important to somehow get together and chant together to develop that faith.
Thank you, Prabhu. Yeah, I like the idea of having japa circles and getting together online. Yeah. It's to encourage devotees.
Yeah, it's a good thing to do.
Thank you.
We get together for so many other reasons. It's
a
great reason to get together and congregate.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Hare Krishna. Okay, it looks like it's getting time for my japa session. It's 6:30 here, 6:37 in Melbourne, and the sun will be up soon. Hopefully it'll warm up. Have a great day and a great week ahead, and we'll see you soon. Thank you for giving me the opportunity, Arjuna, to speak on Bhagavatam. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you. Dandavat pranam.